Okay, so I've gone much longer than usual without releasing a video. That was partially because of the holidays, and mostly because I've been in a bit of a slump. My brain's been being a bit of a dick. I know I've gotten into more personal stuff in this channel than other gaming channels, but my personal investment is part of how I evaluate games. I can give you objective analysis as well, but for example, The Witcher 3 is my favorite game. Not just because it's an amazing game, but because of where it came into my life. That's the lens I view this game through. What I love about the game and how it helped me. I started playing it right after getting sober, and I desperately needed something on that scale to occupy my brain. Hades also came into my life when I needed it. If you are one of the few people that follow this channel, you know from my Celeste video that I've been going through some things. Not knowing where my future is headed and all the uncertainty and fear that comes with that. This exacerbates a problem I've always had, not appreciating my progress in something because I have not deemed it enough. I did this when I did music, stand-up, school, and with this channel. I'll set a goal, usually making money from one of these things, and then up until I meet that goal, I become completely blind to all the progress I've made up to that point. The worst part, though, is I'm not even happy when I meet the goal. I just move on to the next one. When I started stand-up, I wanted to get good enough to get paid to do a show. After a few months, I had my first paid show. Then my focus changed to being able to do longer sets. Eventually, I was able to do a half-hour set and have it go decently well. Then I wanted to get booked more and for longer and more official sets. By the time the pandemic hit, I was doing 5 or 6 paid shows a month, some of them at clubs, and a lot of them were feature-length sets. I never truly stopped to feel accomplished. I never even realized any of the momentum I had until it was swept away by the lockdown. I always had this distinct feeling of repeating the same actions over and over, but staying in the same place, like a hamster in a wheel. In reality, I was more like a hamster in a hamster ball. The only thing that is clear is that I was a hamster. Now that my focus has shifted to this channel, I brought that harmful thought process with me. And it's even stronger coupled with the terrifying feeling of uncertainty. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with Hades? Well, first, we have to talk about Hades. I went into this game not knowing much about it. I had literally just seen some screenshots and knew it was a roguelite because of a Facebook group I'm in that has a lot of big fans of it. These people seem very cool, and I also want to be very cool, so I bought it. I've never been particularly into roguelikes or roguelites. Even the ones I've had fun with, I've never beaten. I'm not entirely sure what the distinction between roguelike and roguelite is, but I think it has something to do with the presence of progression between runs. That is, when you die and are plopped back at the beginning, in a roguelike, you're truly back at square one, while with a roguelite, you have means of permanently improving your character between runs. Whatever the definitions may be, I have always preferred the latter. Hades falls under the category with progression, and the game wouldn't even remotely resemble itself without this. Every facet of gameplay is laced with this progression. There is seemingly no action that can be performed that doesn't create a chain reaction into more development. This got me hooked, especially the way it dished it out. It all comes out so slowly, which makes for a great subversion, honestly. Let me explain. At first, it seems like you just have the typical unlocks a game of this type would provide. New weapons, a few interchangeable upgrades that require currency given through each run, not a huge amount of variation. But as you play, you get more upgrades from a mirror in the protagonist's bedroom that you can purchase with the same currency as the weapons, ways to upgrade the weapons with another currency called Titan Blood, renovations you can do around the house which are just aesthetic, but the same contractor can do stuff to help you directly on each run and help the vast array of characters you meet. This costs 2 other kinds of currency besides the ones I've mentioned already. The characters I just mentioned are also super important as you can get them gifts which unlocks them more upgrades in the form of keepsakes that can be swapped out. And if you earn enough of their trust, you can complete a task for them which can result in yet another upgrade in the form of summons. Then you can use an even rarer gift to increase your relationship with that character and find out more about their story and upgrade their summon if they have one. All of these different kinds of currency can be exchanged for each other either in direct or indirect ways. You can also get huge sums of currency by completing tasks that are predicted by the fates. These reward players for diversifying their playstyle and using everything at their disposal, giving incentive to use every different kind of build. This steers the player away from getting too comfortable with one playstyle and the staleness that comes with that. These fated tasks are also basically essential given how much of the game's rarest currencies they can reward. This ultimately results in a system that rewards the player for playing, then rewards the player for being rewarded. And these rewards aren't all just run-of-the-mill run-of-the-mill stat boosts either. They all work together to genuinely change the way you play. You might be fighting the same general enemies in the same locations every run, but of the 60-something runs I had done, no two of them felt the same. As you progress, you receive upgrades or boons from the gods at random. These reset after every run. These upgrades would create an incredible variety on their own, but working symbiotically with everything else, the potential for variation is astronomically high. There are also huge incentives for the player to create their own customized variety. For example, one of the weapons at the beginning of each run can get you a currency boost if you go with that randomly selected weapon. You also have to do runs with each of the different weapons in order to get more of some of the rarer items because they are so limited. And to get these items, you also have to choose from a set of difficulty modifiers at the beginning of each run based on how many times you've beaten Hades with that weapon. It keeps getting more difficult, so you never feel like you've truly mastered that weapon or the game in general. This leads the multiple attempts at the same thing to be interesting, deeply satisfying, and constantly fun. It perpetually leads to a sense of growth. All combinations I discovered had some advantage, whether I was good at using it or not, and all the different weapons felt totally unique, fun to use, and can be upgraded for different uses, potentially completely changing the way you use them. I don't want to understate how satisfying the actual gameplay is, given how much I focused on the variety. Having a build that can tear through groups of enemies feels so rewarding to do in the moment, and is only compounded by the fact that you wound up with this build through a series of your own choices. The characters in this game also acknowledge the progress you're making. There's an immense amount of dialogue. I'm not sure if I ever saw it repeat itself at any point in the game. It made the whole thing feel so organic, like the in-game world was really reacting to your actions. Already, this was showing me what I was missing in doing the things I enjoy. Every stand-up show, every video I make, every song I wrote, every new thing I learned, all had this variation between them. No two were exactly the same, and they were, of course, things I enjoyed, or I never would have pursued them in the first place. There were obviously times I did thoroughly enjoy what I was doing, but I would so often suck the enjoyment out of this stuff for myself by seeing it as banging my head against the same wall over and over again. But I was completely blind to the real, actual, tangible progress I was making, as well as how much better I was getting and how many vital relationships I had formed. In reality, I was a hamster in a ball, banging my head against several different walls. It goes even deeper than that, though. Going into Hades, I thought beating the game would entail making it 2 and killing the final boss. But as these new upgrades open up, it becomes clear there's so much more to do, to the point I was feeling afraid I would beat it before I was able to obtain most of these things. But this was not the case. Killing the final boss is the first real story beat. You have to do it many more times, and the game gives you absolutely no indication of how many more times you'll have to do it before the credits actually roll. When the credits finally did roll, this just opened up even more to do. Nothing in this game ever fully indicated there is/was a real end. I continued to play. I didn't want it to be over. On top of that, the game had kept me on my toes so much up to that point about what content it was going to offer by trickling in more and more as I went. I had no idea how much more there really was to do. So in doing all of this, Hades went one step further and showed me how arbitrary these goals I had set for myself were. You don't beat Hades when you kill Hades. You have to keep doing it. I enjoyed every part of this process. It was fun, and I loved making progress despite having absolutely no idea where that process was taking me. This was key. When I set a numerical point I need to reach, it makes me miserable. And once I reach it, it just moves anyway, so why act like there is an end point? I'm upset strictly because I haven't met a goal that I set for myself, that I pulled out of nowhere based only on if it would make me money, or how much money it would make me, or how good I decided I needed to be in a certain time frame. This type of thinking has the natural side effect of putting everything you have done on the blurry peripherals, only there to be enjoyed for a day or two at most, before being deemed irrelevant and swapped out for the next goal. I was never happy just to be moving forward, just to be doing it. The actual process of learning and growing and getting more recognition, it is a continuous process and not one that jumps from one milestone to another with nothing in between. Just like in Hades, my goal is a moving target and is intrinsically arbitrary because of it. I never did get to a point in the game that I could truly call the end of Hades. I had to come out of the slump I was in, make this video, and move on to the next game. It will remain unfinished. A reminder that my goals are arbitrary and endless, never done, and never insignificant. That was supposed to be the last line of this video, but as I was putting the script together, a friend that didn't even know this was the angle I was taking in this video sent me this article. It so perfectly encapsulates the relationship between goals and happiness that I had to include it. It's about how teaching rats to drive, that is, giving them an objective or a skill, could raise their happiness. One set of rats lived in an enriched area with more stuff to do, and the other set lived in cages just like normal lab rats. One of these obviously leads to more happiness. And what I thought was interesting about this study was this quote: although both groups of rats learned to drive the car, the ones that lived in the enriched environment were quicker to start driving, and they continued to be more interested in driving even when there was no reward on offer beyond the thrill of the wind in one's fur. A healthy mindset can lead you to feel happiness when there is no tangible reward present. You are just doing something you enjoy. I realized I didn't want to be a hamster in a ball or a hamster in a wheel. I really wanted to be a rat in a car. Like, subscribe, notification bell.